The moment my wife's boss looked me up and down and laughed in front of an entire ballroom full of executives, I felt every eye in the room turn toward me. The crystal chandeliers above sparkled like stars. Expensive suits filled the hall. Waiters moved between tables carrying silver trays. It was supposed to be the proudest night of my wife's career. Instead, it became the night someone tried to humiliate me. What happened next changed all of our lives forever. Before we begin, if you believe kindness is stronger than arrogance and that people deserve second chances, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to A Journey of Hearts. Your support helps us bring more inspiring stories to people around the world. My name is Rowan Mercer, and on the surface, I looked like the last person who belonged at a corporate gala. That evening I wore a simple navy suit I had owned for years. No designer labels. No luxury watch. No flashy car waiting outside. Most people saw an ordinary middle-aged man. I preferred it that way. For nearly 20 years, I had quietly built a business that most people had never heard of. I rarely appeared in magazines. I avoided interviews whenever possible. I never cared much for attention. The people who worked with me knew who I was. The rest of the world usually didn't. And that suited me perfectly. My wife, Marisol Vance, was different. She was brilliant, ambitious, and compassionate. After years of hard work, she had climbed through the ranks of a large consulting firm. Nobody handed her opportunities. She earned every single one. I still remembered the tiny apartment where we started our lives together. The leaking sink. The broken heater. The endless bills stacked on the kitchen table. Back then, Marisol would stay awake studying long after midnight while I worked on building my company. There were nights when both of us wondered if our sacrifices would ever pay off. Yet we never stopped believing in each other. When she received an invitation to the company's annual leadership celebration, I could see how much it meant to her. It wasn't just another event. It was recognition. Validation. Proof that years of effort had finally been noticed. The event was being held at one of the city's most luxurious hotels. As we drove there that afternoon beneath clear blue skies, sunlight poured through the windshield. Marisol looked nervous. She kept adjusting her earrings. Checking her phone. Reviewing details she had already memorized. I reached over and squeezed her hand. She smiled. That smile reminded me of the young woman who once believed she could conquer the world. And honestly, she already had. When we arrived, the hotel lobby buzzed with activity. Executives greeted one another. Photographers snapped pictures. Employees celebrated promotions and achievements. For the first hour, everything went perfectly. I stayed mostly in the background while Marisol spoke with colleagues. Several people introduced themselves. Most were polite. Some were genuinely kind. Then I met Victor Hargrove. Victor was the regional director. Technically, he was Marisol's boss. The first thing I noticed about him was how he treated people. He smiled warmly at executives. But the moment he spoke to hotel staff, assistants, or junior employees, his expression changed. His voice became colder. Sharper. As if respect were reserved only for those he considered important. People like Victor often reveal themselves long before trouble begins. You just have to pay attention. At first, he barely acknowledged me. That didn't bother me. The evening wasn't about me. It was about my wife. But as the event continued, Victor seemed increasingly interested in finding out who I was. He asked questions that felt less like conversation and more like an investigation. What did I do? Where did I work? What kind of business was I involved in? I answered politely but vaguely. Years of experience had taught me that not everyone needed my biography. Especially people whose curiosity came wrapped in arrogance. Apparently my answers frustrated him. Without specific details to categorize me, Victor made assumptions. And those assumptions would soon become very expensive. Later that evening, guests gathered near the ballroom stage for speeches. Marisol stood among several employees being recognized for exceptional performance. I watched from a nearby table. Pride filled my chest. She looked radiant. Confident. Strong. Everything she had worked for was finally being celebrated. Then Victor took the microphone. The speech started normally. He praised company growth. Thanked leadership. Recognized key employees. The audience applauded. Then something changed. Victor began making jokes. At first they seemed harmless. But gradually his attention drifted toward Marisol. Specifically toward me. He made comments about spouses who benefited from successful partners. The audience chuckled politely. Then he looked directly at me. A grin spread across his face. The kind of grin people wear when they think they're clever. He remarked that some employees had husbands who were fortunate enough to enjoy the rewards of someone else's hard work. More laughter. My stomach tightened. Marisol's smile faded. Victor continued. He joked about how appearances could be misleading. About how some people looked like they wandered into the wrong ballroom. The room grew quieter. Everyone understood who he meant. For a brief moment, I considered standing up. Defending myself. Defending my wife. But I didn't. Because this wasn't about me. And because experience had taught me something important. People who desperately seek attention often destroy themselves if given enough time. Victor wasn't finished. He invited Marisol onto the stage. As she walked forward, he made another remark suggesting that ambition sometimes had to compensate for poor choices at home. A few uncomfortable laughs echoed across the room. Many guests looked away. Others stared at the floor. Embarrassment spread through the audience like a slow-moving wave. Marisol stood frozen. I could see the hurt in her eyes. That hurt affected me far more than any insult directed toward myself. She had worked tirelessly for this moment. And someone was trying to tarnish it for his own amusement. I felt anger rising inside me. Not explosive anger. The dangerous kind. The quiet kind. The kind that becomes determination. Victor eventually finished speaking. Applause followed, though it sounded weaker than before. The atmosphere had changed. People sensed something wasn't right. When Marisol returned to our table, she tried to smile. But tears threatened to form. I took her hand beneath the table. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. After all these years, silence often communicated more than words. The award ceremony concluded. Dinner began. Conversations resumed. Yet tension lingered in the air. Several employees approached our table. They apologized for Victor's behavior. Some looked genuinely upset. Others seemed frightened. Apparently this wasn't the first time he had humiliated someone publicly. He simply hadn't been challenged before. As the evening continued, Victor moved through the ballroom greeting guests. Eventually he approached our table once again. This time he appeared even more confident. Success can create a dangerous illusion. People begin believing there will never be consequences. Victor leaned against a nearby chair and smiled. The smile wasn't friendly. It was victorious. He believed he had established dominance. He believed nobody could touch him. And most of all, he believed I was insignificant. The conversation that followed was brief. But it revealed everything. Victor spoke about success as though it belonged exclusively to people like him. He measured human worth through titles, appearances, and income. He treated kindness as weakness. Humility as failure. Listening to him felt like watching someone build a prison around themselves brick by brick. The saddest part was that he didn't even realize it. When he finally walked away, Marisol looked exhausted. I squeezed her hand again. Then I told her something I had always believed. A person's character eventually introduces them long before their achievements do. Victor had just introduced himself to everyone in that ballroom. And the room had noticed. A little later, I stepped outside onto the hotel terrace. The evening sun was beginning to set. Golden light stretched across the city skyline. For several minutes I stood alone, breathing deeply. Reflecting. Then I heard footsteps. A familiar voice greeted me. I turned and immediately recognized the speaker. It was one of the keynote guests attending the event. A respected business leader whose company partnered with organizations across the country. His eyes widened when he saw me. The surprise on his face made me smile. We shook hands warmly. What happened next would send shockwaves through the ballroom. Because unlike Victor, this man knew exactly who I was. And within minutes, others would know too. But the revelation wasn't the most important part of the story. The most important part was what happened afterward. Because real success isn't about proving someone wrong. It's about showing people a better way to be right. And before this night ended, Victor Hargrove was about to learn that lesson in front of everyone. If this story has touched your heart so far, please take a moment to like, comment, and share. Stories like these remind us that true dignity comes from character, not status. Special request: comment below with the words, "Kindness always wins," if you believe people should never be judged by appearances. The evening was far from over. In fact, the most unforgettable moment had yet to happen.